So if we look at some of the more influential orders that have taught Rosicrucianism over the years, we can look at orders like Fraternitas Rosicrucis, which is the oldest Rosicrucian order in the United States. I actually have a indirect connection to this order, although I'm not a member. I have a close friend who is a member, and he operates out of Beverly Hall Lodge, which is also run, operated by Fraternitatis Rosicrucis. They operate out of Quakertown, Pennsylvania. It's probably the oldest Rosicrucian lodge in the United States.
Yeah, this of course, is the famed Beverly Hall mentioned in the Mystery Babylon series by William Cooper, headed by R. Swinburne Clymer, who is, of course, passed on in the mid-'60s. So I am way excited to hear about that. Mark, before we move on, if I may, speaking of Mystery Babylon, in the series, Bill Cooper, if I can just quote him, he commented on the cross of the Rosicrucians, and hammered onto the crucifix itself, being the good Catholic that you were in your upbringing, I'm sure. The phrase was INRI, I-N-R-I, and
that's right.
Here's Cooper's quote. It says, quote, I-N-R-I, or INRI, in effect, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum, which means, quote, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, end quote. And then continuing his quote, the inscription which was placed upon the cross of the Savior. In the Philosophical Lodge, and he's speaking of Beverly Hall, the Rosicrucians that you're speaking of.
Right.
In the Philosophical Lodge, they represent fire, salt, sulfur, and mercury. Here we go back to alchemy. In the system of the Rosicrucians, they have a similar use. Igne natura renovator integra, meaning literally, and I'm sure the Latin student you've already gotten this, quote, by fire nature is perfectly
nature will
renewed.
Be renewed whole. Yes.
Oh, so I just wanted to put that out there.
That's right. By fire, nature will be renewed whole. Right. And it means that we're in a process of purification, and it may require heat in order to accomplish that task. And I don't think that it has to be that way, but I think humanity is pretty much choosing that it go in that direction, that we are purified by fire. I'd rather do it by an act of will, meaning that's also been associated through as fire, willpower, fire, actions, but it's going to get done one way or another, either by an act of will or by tribulation, the fires of purification. So I guess you can look at it either way you look at it. In that sense, it will be accomplished by fire. So that is the esoteric interpretation of INRI, as opposed to Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum, which is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. That's the exoteric interpretation. The esoteric, indeed, is Igne natura renovator integra, which is all of nature will be renewed by fire. Yes, or by fire, nature will be renewed as a whole, as one. In other words, to come back to the point of oneness, fire is required. And again, you can look at that two ways. If we willfully align ourselves with natural law, the will of creation, then it will be done in an act of our own will, which has traditionally been corresponded to the element of fire, will. If we don't use our will, it's going to be done by tribulation, by literal burning or suffering, okay? And eventually we will see the error of our ways once we suffer enough, and then decide to come back up from that torturous descent into a hellish domain of our own making. I would much rather it happen through an act of our own will, through conscious co-creation and our own individual wills aligning with the divine will or the will of creation, okay, with natural law. It would be a lot less painful of an experience for sure. But that, again, is a choice that is up to humanity to make. And we make that choice as individuals. And then those individual choices become, I guess you could say, amassed. and that creates a collective quantum effect, which basically guides the direction of the whole of our species. We are bound in that respect, and many people will look at that as an unfortunate binding, but it happens to just be the way that it is. We are all basically tied together on this spaceship Earth. So that's why it's so important to reach out to others and try to educate them about these principles. So let's start looking into some of the allegory, if we can. We could look at... And Mark, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, Mark, and I apologize. I just wanted to plug in there or tuck in there that
Sure.
that intro, the small bit from Court of the Crimson King, that was in your honor. Indeed, the return of the Fire Witch. A Fire Witch in the ancient tongue is known as an alchemist, and you are a faithful steward of alchemy, assisting others on our progress, and mine in particular, as we try to reach higher stages of consciousness. The Fire Witch in that song had to do with the Magus Adeptus of the court of Frederick II, the last of the German Holy Roman Emperors. He was the last Holy Roman Emperor who happened to be a German, and at that stage, he was the court alchemist, or the court seer, so to speak. And when he had returned from a long absence in Spain to translate the Averroes, which is an alchemical text, written by some Arab. Like I said, I'm a student of this, but I'm learning. But as stated, it was in honor of Michael Scott, who was the alchemist to Frederick II, a faithful steward to the last Holy Roman Emperor. And you are a faithful steward of alchemy to us, Mark, the people of the 21st century, desperately trying to break through all this allegory to find simple truths. And once again, I thank you for your voice, as always, my friend, the faithful steward of alchemy, Mark Passio.
Bob, I so much appreciate that, and that's a very interesting anecdote on that song and the story that lays behind it. Thanks so much for that.
My pleasure.
I guess I could take the last couple of minutes of this hour to just briefly go over some of the other orders in the modern day, again, of this ancient tradition. These are some of the more modern orders that came up to basically teach its tenets. And then I definitely want to spend the second hour looking into the allegorical tradition and some of the documents and take a look at some of the modern teachers and their work, and maybe even read a little bit from one of Max Heindel's books. So was also the very famous Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which combined a lot of Hermetic and Kabbalistic teachings with some Rosicrucian teachings and teachings of Theosophy, etc. We have the Order of the Temple of the Rosy Cross. That was founded as sort of almost an offshoot of the Theosophical Society. We have the Temple of the Rosy Cross taught not only Rosicrucianism, but Kabbalistic teachings, astrology, Masonic teachings, and Christian mystical traditions as well. There's the Rosicrucian Fellowship, which is an order that I think put out some of the best teachings on Rosicrucianism because it was founded by Max Heindel, who I consider one of the best Rosicrucian teachers. And he founded this order back in 1909. It was headquartered in Oceanside, California, where Heindel moved, and I believe that's also where he passed away. Max Heindel, as I've said, was probably one of the most predominant Rosicrucian teachers. He was born in Denmark in the mid-1800s, I think 1865. He was an esoteric Christian occultist, taught the Rosicrucian tradition. He was a mystic. And yes, he did die in 1919 in Oceanside, where he founded the Rosicrucian Fellowship. The Rosicrucian Fellowship was begun with the intention of teaching the true philosophy of esoteric Christianity, And these esoteric Christian mysteries were intended to establish a firm philosophical foundation for the communication of those teachings. That's why Heindel came together to form this organization. Heindel formed this organization with others. he also wanted to establish a common meeting ground for people who were like-minded to him and also were into these studies, and a place for them to come together to basically communicate those ideas and basically prepare others through developing themselves, working upon themselves to come to a place where they would truly be of service to humankind through the communication of these teachings. So I think it's probably the most influential Rosicrucian sect or order of the modern times, personally. But the biggest one of today is, I would say, definitely the ancient mystical order Rosicrucius, or the ancient mystical order of the Rosy Cross, which is AMORC, AMORC. It's named for short as its anagram. Yes.
Before we move on to AMORC, Mark, can I comment on Max Heindel?
Absolutely.
Author of the work, quote, The Rosicrucian Cosmo-Conception or Mystic Christianity. It is his magnum opus, so to speak. And you're right, the Rosicrucian Fellowship is the publishing. They put out all these turn-of-the-century books that people can still find, these cloth-bound books about Rosicrucianism that are definitely competitors with the other order that you spoke of earlier, the Rose Cross Order of Beverly Hall Publishing that still publishes books. But Heindel's organizations put out a lot of the work that we can still get our hands on to read. And if I can, I wanted to put out about Heindel, one of the more interesting parts of his history. During a partly rewarding, partly disappointing trip to visit Rudolf Steiner in Germany, Max Heindel was visited by a spiritual being identifying himself as the, quote, elder brother. This is all in the work of Heindel. This is their work. The elder brother of the Rosicrucian Order of the Inner Worlds, end quote, formed in the year 1313, which claimed no association with the temporal and physical organizations calling themselves Rosicrucians. Heindel was given instruction on how to travel to an area between Germany and Bohemia, which is what we would call Czechoslovakia or the Czech Republic now. There he would find a, quote, etheric temple of the Rose Cross Order. Heindel explained that he was, for a period of time, under the instruction of the elder brothers of the Rose Cross. This otherworldly order being composed of 12 elder brothers, with the 13th as the invisible head. These profound adepts were described, which is just, mind-boggling, this tale, but I wanted to share it. And it's, like I said, this is truth to the people who
supposedly they
wrote
only
this.
had vital bodies. They had energy bodies and not physical ones. And they communicated a lot of the teachings that he later set forward in his works to him at that time. Yes.
These profound adepts were described as belonging to human evolution, but having already advanced beyond the wheel of birth and death, just like you said. These exalted beings guiding mankind's progression in consciousness, known as the compassionate ones. I just thought that was amazing to read.
In Freemasonry, these types of spiritual beings have often been called guides or hidden chiefs. Some people might term them as angels in the Christian tradition. Regardless of what you call them or whether you even believe the story, I would look at this as higher aspects of the self or higher aspects of creation that are basically helping to push us along, or you could look at pull us along. They're in a higher place and they're pulling us upward. This idea is kind of borne out in Heindel's work on cycles, or on the progression of the spirit. He has a part in his book. I'm actually sitting here with a copy, a cloth-bound copy of the Rosicrucian Cosmo-Conception. I think it's a 1930s printing. And I wanted to read a little bit from that later if we have time. But
Sure.
One of the things that Heindel talked about in his book was the pilgrimage of the spirit and how it goes through cycles of descending into more dense matter to gain more experience and then ascending back up toward the realm of pure spirit. So we'll look at that when we get to Heindel's teachings.